week on Barbell Shrugged, we are busting myths with Dr. Andy Galpin, professor and researcher at Cal State Fullerton. Also, we're catching up on old times. Do you recognize any of these faces?
Oh, if I can get it to focus.
I was so fat. Barbell Shrugged is brought to you by you. To learn more about how you can support the show, go to barbellshrugged.com and sign up for the newsletter.
I couldn't remember exactly.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Barbell Shrugged. I'm Mike BLEDSOE here with Doug Larson. Chris Moore, got CTP behind the camera. We are in sunny California.
God, it's glorious out
We're
here.
at Huntington Beach. We're here actually for a business event that we're putting on. If you were wondering why we just hang out in California. If you want to know more about things we do with business events and stuff, if you're running a gym, you might want to run over to barbellbusiness.com. Sign up for that. We have a guest here today, Dr. Andy Galpin.
Such a special guest.
You might know him from such shows as Barbell Shrugged.
Episode whatever.
He's on episode, what?
19.
Episode 19.
And episode 91 with Bas Rutten, which was probably my favorite episode.
Oh, Bas Rutten was
is
one of the
man.
funnest episodes we've ever
I
done.
wish I would have been there to see you get kicked in the balls.
But you weren't exactly featured on that show. The one that you were like, you were our sole guest, I missed. I was like super upset about it. It was like
That's why it was so good.
well, people that actually made me upset. People were like, "Man, that was the best one you guys did." Yeah, I was like, "I wasn't
My
even there."
feelings
You
are hurt,
son of a-
assholes.
And then you missed the Bas Rutten one, too.
I
right?
know. This is the first time we've all been on together.
First time.
We've known each other for how long now?
Well, Doug and I...
Don't count that shit. That's OG
15,
relationship.
Yeah, we met in college in Oregon
18,
in
a lot of years.
2001.
Before
probably.
people get
So
bored.
13.
And then you gentlemen.
Hey,
when
you
I-
like chicks and beer too? All right, we're buddies
way.
now.
Well,
no way, bro.
That's actually a pretty awesome story about how Doug and I did meet.
Hang on,
Chicks and beer.
Here's the thing. Here's
Kinda.
the thing, real quick. We didn't bring Andy on just because he's a good friend of ours and he likes chicks and beer just like the rest of us.
And he's our brother, and we love him.
He actually, he's a professor at Cal State Fullerton. You teach exercise science stuff, PhD in bioenergetics. You work with UFC fighters. You do a lot of research with those guys and teach them how to
#legit.
how to not suck or how to be better. I mean, none of those guys suck.
No.
But you definitely help tweak their performance and all that kind of stuff. So before you think, oh, this is just going to be a bullshit show where
Well, it's gonna be
they just
that
hang
too.
out with their buddy,
It's gonna be that.
you're going to get a lot of that because Andy's super cool.
But when we bullshit, we talk science.
But we're going to talk about some really solid stuff here. So don't just tune out at this point. All right, now, how did Doug and Andy meet?
You telling it?
Up to you.
You got the better perspective.
All right. So I'll give the maybe not get Doug divorced
no.
version.
No.
Okay, so Doug and I went to school together, did our undergrad, and we both played football together. But when you're a freshman football player, you're meeting 150 guys in a few days.
It's intense.
I didn't even meet him halfway through the season or more, maybe.
Dude, every year playing football, I only knew half the team.
Yeah, right.
At best.
So I actually had a job when I was an undergrad. I had to clean the dorms. So I would vacuum the dorms and stuff like that. And I was in one of the halls vacuuming in one of the top floors.
Oh, you got to tell this whole story.
And I look through the window. I think I told this at your wedding.
Probably.
Yeah, I think I did. So I look through the window, and I see in one of the other dorms a window open. And I'm looking through the window, and I can clearly see two people shaking hands.
But not with our hands.
But not with your hands, exactly. And I was like, huh. And I stared a couple extra seconds. So, I don't know, a week or
15, 16 minutes.
Yeah, right.
Did you just stared?
No one else was around. A week or something goes by, I'm not sure. And I was in that dorm cleaning that hall. And the door's open. And then Doug's standing there. And I was like, hey, I think we played football together, right? Who are you? I'm Doug. Hey, great. Wait a minute. Were you here last Wednesday, 3 o'clock?
I recognize your bare chest.
Yeah, why? I was over there in that window. Oh.
Being
I think
creepy.
I think that's how it started. Is I'm vacuuming and I said, "Hey, were you here?" And he said, "Yeah." And he said, yeah, I'm Doug. I'm like, hey, I'm Andy. That's great.
He goes, were you having sex in here on Wednesday at like noon? I was like,
No, it's
Yeah.
shaking hands. Shaking hands.
he goes, I saw you. I go, oh, no way. I'm Doug. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. As
That's
the
how
years
the
go by.
greatest bromance ever told.
Yeah, and as the years go
Got
by, that
started.
story gets fuzzier and fuzzier. I can't remember some of those details.
You just got to start filling it in with
You got
things
the
that are more interesting.
Basic idea.
Yeah.
And then, and then I think a few weeks or months later, we moved in together.
And that's so funny because then pretty much after you came to Memphis and started your studies for your master's degree.
Yeah, but we kind of came randomly.
Yeah, they didn't come together
No.
to University of
No.
Memphis.
No.
We just talked about having sex, and then you talk about coming together. This is
Yeah.
getting bad.
So it worked out, yeah.
No, I went and did my internship with the Colorado Rockies, and then you went and did your internship with Mark Verstegen
Yeah, in Arizona.
In Arizona, and then I called you up after because we ended up meeting Dr. Fry,
Right.
one of the professors from the University of Memphis, when we were at an NSCA conference, and so we had both kind of had like in a way. We had developed a relationship with Dr. Fry, and so
Right.
we had talked to him independently, and then after my internship was over, I called you up and I was like, "Hey, you going to graduate school?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm going to Memphis." I said, "Fuck, me too."
I actually
Fantastic.
remember
No way.
I hadn't never. Now, you got to keep this in mind. Doug and I lived together. We played football together. We we're the same majors. We almost had every class together. So we literally spent almost every
Became
minute
the
for
same person.
3 years.
Like your Menzies cycles aligned.
We
didn't they?
moved to
You
Europe.
watch each other shaking hands with other people.
We moved to Europe together.
Yeah,
for
all this
months.
shit's true, right?
Yeah, and
You almost died in
so when
Ukraine
we
or whatever
graduated,
together?
it was sort of like, all right, bro, have fun. Like, it was a nice sort of time off. So months go by without really even speaking, and I get a phone call. I'm in like the middle of Wyoming driving to Memphis. And I'm like, oh, Doug, hey, what's up, man? And then that's when that whole thing down. I was like, fuck, I'm in the middle of Wyoming right now going to Memphis. You got to be kidding me. Yeah. So, and then they put us in the same house together. And we were actually like, we requested to not live together because we're like, if we do that, we know how we are. I'm going to only meet you. Like, you're going to be the only friend, and likewise. So we need to branch out. So I moved in, and I moved in with Corey Lonis, who was on a couple times with you guys.
Yeah, Dr. Corey Lonis.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then you
Fuck, man,
moved in.
We knew a lot of smart people.
And then actually that allowed you the space to move in with Doug.
Yeah, well, kind of. I mean, it
A year
allowed
later.
me a laundry room to live in for a while before I got a real room.
Dude,
And then
$200
after
bucks
that-
a month. You couldn't pass it up.
$200 a month. I had a closet.
no-brainer.
to sleep
The
in.
laundry room
It's a fucking
closet.
no-brainer.
And then I left Corey, couldn't handle that bastard anymore. Canadians can't handle it.
No,
And had to move in with Chris.
small doses.
Yeah, so I started working, doing some shit. I can't remember now. Life's too good now. But I was doing some job, had a house, had extra room. I was like, fuck, who can I ask who's like my best buddy in the world to come in and live with me? So fucking Dr. Galpin moves in. And we lived there for a couple of years, right?
I think a year.
A year?
Yeah.
It was
just
the
1
best.
year.
It was the fucking best time in the world, man.
It was, that house was so awesome because you got to understand at that time I was cutting weight
Some fun
for,
parties there.
I was cutting
Oh,
weight
yeah.
for weightlifting national championships. And at the same time, Chris was actively gaining for powerlifting competitions. So picture you're in Memphis in summer with the hot-ass, terrible weather. I am constantly freezing because I'm trying to lose all this weight.
You're spitting in the cups and shit.
Yeah, and I'm just like, a hot cup of creatine tea is like my fucking Friday night, like Vice Friday, right? And I gotta watch
Creatine
this
tea.
bastard every single night eat a whole bar of chocolate cooking and peanut butter and fire the whole thing down. And he's got 14 fans going on. And he's sweating like a pig. He just discovered rock band, so he's just all
Fucking
over
drumming.
it. And I'm just sitting there shaking.
The
just
funniest thing ever
freezing.
was, I remember the story, man. It makes you laugh, right? I was sitting there eating. I told some shit like, because I was super heavyweight power, I was like 365 pounds or something. I looked over at him. I was like, "Yeah, man. It's funny. I don't really know why I'm so big. I don't eat that much. And like while I'm saying I'm eating a fucking sweet potato pie out of the shell,
whole pie.
I'm watching TV. Like, I ate half that fucking pie right there in front of this guy. I don't really eat that much. Eating a fucking whole pie by myself.
Oh, God.
And then the cheat meal, the best cheat meal was like a whole large cooking bar. Not like the shit you would buy
Like
for
the
your personal
super dense
consumption.
ones.
No,
Yeah.
a big, huge, like 3-inch thick,
So we make cakes out
dark,
of.
special dark chocolate Hershey's bar. You make a cake out of it. I go to get that and break off the huge chunks, like small little bricks, and just dig them through a trench of fucking peanut butter. Not organic, not natural, not any of that shit. No, like just sugary Jif peanut butter, and just slam like a whole bar of that down.
And I'm eating like a can of tuna fish and 4 carrots, and I'm just like,
I'm like, man, weightlifting's so boring. Come on, man. Power lift.
it worked out, though.
So now you're helping train UFC fighters, and you're traveling around with them to their fights. You get to go to the UFC all the time, which is fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, we had a really good relationship. We've had a lot of those guys came up a few years ago to get some baseline testing done, and it just worked out really well. Sort of the feedback I gave them, and then the questions just sort of spurred from there on out from those guys, and we just had a really good relationship. A lot of the guys I work with down here, Jake Ellenberger, I've been working with him for a long time. He's a great guy.
Mm-hmm.
Got in good with Ryan Parsons, who manages a lot of these guys, was one of Dan Henderson's original training partners.
That guy was all right.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
Yeah,
so
he came and hung out a little bit when we were doing the Boss episode.
yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah, and that's actually how Boss got me is Boss has a product he wanted to get some testing done on, so Ryan was like, I got a guy that can do this stuff for you. So Boss called me.
So if you have an idea for a product, Dr. Andy Galpin might be able to test it
for
and
the right money. Yeah,
and do the research necessary for you to slap a label on it that says this was researched at this school. And
so now we've been working with. I had the blast. You guys, this is so awesome. We got to work with. I work with Pat Cummings. If you guys know Pat, he fought a few fights ago. Fought Daniel Cormier, who's probably the number 2 ranked guy in 2 divisions, and he fought him on 9 days' notice. This is pretty awesome. You can imagine now, this guy's been trying to get into the UFC for a few years. No one will fight him because he's too good. But the UFC says you only have 4 fights, so you can't get in. So he's sort of stuck in limbo, and then he gets a call, basically 9 days' notice, says you want to fight, you're fighting the co-main event, and you're going to fight a guy who's an Olympian, and he's number 1 2 divisions. And so that whole process was awesome. We're working with him. We've been working with Dennis Bermudez. Both of those guys fight. Pat and Dennis fight this weekend, so we head up there for that. But it's been really good because a lot of those guys, like a lot of your CrossFitters, they train so hard, and they want so bad to do everything right, and they want to succeed, and the work is there.
Not the problem.
It's not even close to the problem. But these guys had no perspective whatsoever on planning, on what's happening in the body. Nothing like that. It was just, how much harder can I go for 8 weeks?
going by feel.
Well, all their training is based on the history of...
It's not going by feel.
More
because
is
feel
better.
is mental weakness, Mike.
Oh yeah,
Mental weakness.
Yeah,
If you're
I forgot about
tired,
that.
you're not training hard enough.
That's
You
a
gotta ignore your
wrestling.
feelings.
That comes from like the wrestling backgrounds. You got to train no matter what. Train as hard as you can, or else you're
and
a
so
pussy.
if they train by feel, they'd probably be okay, actually. But they don't.
They're not.
They just go. And so from my perspective, where I came in was saying, okay, here's actually, it was basic rudimentary. If you go hard 8 days in a row, we probably need to have at least a half-day recovery. Can I get you there?
Let's start there.
Yeah, and just planning out, you got 8 weeks or you got 12 weeks. How can we put these things together to get you the least chance of injury? Because injury is so high with these guys. And how can we get you to perform at the right time? You guys know what it feels like to peak the day before, 2 days after. It's awful, right? It's the worst thing ever. You guys have all bombed.
What about like a month before, 2 months before? I'm like, fuck. I did my math for this on the back of a fucking napkin.
Yeah.
I think I saw a video one time of Josh Koscheck going out to do some extra work after practice. A guy who's very talented and works super, super
Fought
hard.
for a world championship, yeah.
Yeah, and someone came in, I think it was one of the strength coaches in the video, and says like, hey man, more isn't always better. And he looked at him like, dude, I've been doing this a long fucking time. Trust me, more is better.
Well, what they forget too is like, more is better when you're 17 and 18. It's not, but you can get away with it. You can be fine.
That's the right way to say it. You get away with it.
But
you don't
when
feel the pain yet.
Exactly. When you're 25 even, which is young, but when you've been training really hard for 15 years, 25 gets old.
Yeah.
30. We need a little bit more, and now you got to balance. The best part is they show up. I'm 175 pounds. I got to get to 145 in 4 weeks. Ooh, and you got to train more.
Oy.
Awesome. So that's when it gets really hard. So it's been fun helping those guys a little bit along the way. And then getting to go to the fights is, of course, really, really fun.
So the first part of that is just teaching them to maybe reduce their training volume a little bit, and then you're also helping them with recovery aspects?
Yeah, so a lot of it, too, is nutrition. You guys know this, but
hot dogs and fucking energy drinks.
Yes, you would be surprised on what their nutritional plans are. Sometimes it's no plan. A lot of times it's really bad information.
They're just going off of information they maybe heard from a guy or read out of a magazine.
Yeah, I was actually for Jake's last fight, he trained a lot in Glendale, at the same camp that Ronda Rousey trains with her coach.
She's all right, isn't she?
And he's actually a really smart guy, Edmund. No, she's fantastic.
Would you let her punch you in the face for $100?
Actually, I've had her punch me really close to the face.
Oh,
yeah.
Hot?
Where'd she punch?
I had a cup one everywhere. I had to move my head a lot of the way. But her coach was talking about how, she got on this crazy plan where she wasn't eating on Sundays and she was eating one meal a day, and and all these
That's
things.
not
And
a plan for athletes.
Now, keep in mind, this guy is he's not a nutritionist, and he's admitted, like, I know a lot about training boxing. I don't know shit about all these other things, but he's like, all I know is when she ate one meal a day, she trained like shit. She constantly got hurt. She constantly got injured. When she started eating again, she felt way better, and we trained way better.
It's like the baseball pitcher who has a ritual before the game, like sacrificing chickens to Jobu and shit. Well, I didn't do it. I threw slow. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. I sacrificed a chicken. I threw a fucking 100-mile-an-hour fastball. That's all I know.
A lot of the stuff with these guys, it's not like I'm giving them any revolutionarily, like, super secret, buy my 6-week diet plan. It's like, hey,
eat protein.
Right.
Hey, do you think maybe if you
Pretty
packaged it that way, they might buy into it?
well, that's what they do, and they package
Let's do that.
shit.
I'll tell you who's
Well,
opposite
you know
of
what?
that.
Hey, don't worry, guys. In the Barbell Shrugged shop, coming soon.
You know who's impressive?
Dr. Andy Galpin's going to write a book. We're come up with a very sensational name, so don't forget to check it out.
What people don't realize is they want to know what these high-level guys are doing, and it's the very basics. And when you can get them from there, just the basics, they just
eat real food.
Yeah.
Sleep when your body says you're tired. Sit down. Rest.
Oh yeah.
Don't worry about shit during the day. It helps if you have a job that allows you to fight for a living. You don't have to
Right.
fucking throw boxes at UPS distribution center all day. Like, you know who impressed me? Johnny Bones Jones, his Instagram feed. That dude has some omelets that are so amazing looking. Like, maybe it's the guy understands that food's important. He has a chef to cook him real meal foods. Maybe it starts with that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, if you're getting paid, I think if you're getting paid more than 6 figures a year to be an athlete, getting a chef at that point is probably going to make you get to where you can make $1 million a year.
Think of it financially.
Yeah.
How much longer can your cure last if you feed your body the way you probably should? Like, if you eat food every day and you get 5 more years of fighting out of it, that's probably worth the cost of that fucking chef.
And I can tell you probably the thing that got me on board with these guys the most. They were actually, some of these guys were decent. Ryan Parsons is pretty good. Pat was pretty good. They're solid with nutrition. The first thing I actually explained to them was speed work.
Yeah.
And they were blown away. They were like, oh. And I was like, if you're getting tired, you're doing it wrong.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And they're really good because they're open to feedback. And they were like, oh, we've been doing this for 30 years, and we never thought about that.
Right.
And we bring these guys to the lab. They're tremendous athletes all around.
That's awesome because most coaches go, hey, I've been doing this for 30 years. Fuck off.
Well, that's why I work with these guys, is because they are like that.
Yeah.
I don't have the time. Like, I don't need to work with you guys. This is stuff I do on the side. I don't need that. And when I explained that stuff to them, and I showed them the stuff in the lab, and I showed them the test results, and they're like, wow, we are slower than middle school girls.
You are, that's right.
I mean, we're strong as beasts, and we just don't fatigue, and our lungs are huge and whatnot. And they started implementing that, and we just saw huge 20% gains in performance of tests you can't fake, force plate stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You can't fake that.
Right.
You can't.
There's more force into the plate, or there wasn't.
And they're like, wow, we're doing less, we're going faster, we feel better, we're training more often, and we're getting better. I'm like, and it's not any revolutionary secret.
It's science.
It's the shit we teach you.
Turns out that, you measure shit and you figure shit out. You should use the data at hand to train.
Hey, I mean, I've been pulled in the same thing, studied, the right way to do things, and then I stumble across something that's supposed to be different.
Right.
And then I get
Sexy
sucked
and
into
novel.
it for a little bit, and then I go, whoa, maybe I should apply these principles that apply to every human being.
And the planet and the earth and everything.
Things like periodization or something like that. And there you go.
Well, it's the shit that you write about in your blog and stuff. Like, it's really pretty simple.
Yeah.
It's not. We're not that much faster and bigger and stronger than we were thousands of years ago, really.
Yeah, people want to talk about undulating miles of periodization. I go, how many hours of sleep did you get last night? 4? Fucking go to bed.
Yeah,
There's your
why are we
fucking first
talking
lesson
about
of being
that?
strong. Go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so before the show started, we were all bullshitting out here in the backyard.
Shocking.
It was like 2 hours of pregame for this episode of the podcast.
And we just started talking about different things, and we were like, oh, man, we should just turn this into a myth-busting episode.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, I'll kick it off with one of the ones, and this really isn't myth buster, but people go, oh, I don't take creatine because I don't want to gain weight, right?
Right after this break.
Oh, okay. All right, we're going to take a break real quick, and then we're going to bust some myths.
Welcome back to Technique Quad. I'm Doug Larson from Barbell Shrugged. This is video number 6 for the squat series. We're talking about overhead squats. All right, video number 1, we talked about the overview of the squat, just basic squatting technique. Heels on the deck, knees over your toes, always keeping a nice, straight, normal, neutral spine. Video number 2 was on front squats. Video number 3 was on back squats. Video number 4 was on spotting. Video number 5 was on box squats. And now, again, this is video number 6. We're talking about overhead squats. So here's what an overhead squat looks like from the side. If I'm here. Okay. From the front, same. Okay. So, the drill that I like the best, and the reason I have a PVC pipe in my hand, I don't have a name for it, but it looks like this, where instead of grabbing the bar just like this, you set the bar flat on your hand like that. And if you can do an overhead squat with your hands flat just like this, and you can do a perfect overhead squat just like that, then you can probably do an overhead squat with a barbell and with a lot of weight, because in order for you to go all the way down in this position where your hand is flat, you're all the way externally rotated, and your elbows are straight, if you can do it like that, that means that you have all the mobility that you need to do an overhead squat with a regular barbell or what have you. So if you can't do an overhead squat like that, then you probably have some mobility restrictions that you need to work around first before you even need to worry about adding weight or doing full squat snatches or anything that's overhead squat related. So gotta have the mobility first. The overhead squat is kind of an interesting movement, because if you have restrictions pretty much anywhere, upper body or lower body, then it's going to throw your form all off, and you're going to get all funky, and you're going to compensate, and you're going to hurt yourself. So from the side, here's kind of the common compensations. If I don't have very mobile shoulders, then oftentimes the bar will be in front of me, and I'll lean back a little bit. It keeps my arm vertical, but I'm leaning back because I can't go all the way overhead, and then I tend to be here as I go down, or I tend to bend my arms like this, and I try to stay forward like that, okay? So if I can't get my arms all the way straight and floating behind my head like this, then I'm either gonna, again, bend my elbows and internally rotate and break here, or I'm gonna keep my elbows straight and I'm gonna lean back. Either way, you probably have some type of a shoulder range of motion issue that you need to go fix if you're gonna ever overhead squat correctly, okay? Other things, if I have ankle mobility limitations and I can't bend my ankles very much, then I'm probably going to push my butt back and bend forward like this, because my ankle can't bend any further than that, and then my arms end up floating way behind me, where if I stand up all the way, they're actually behind me like that, okay? So if you do that, or ankle-wise, if I get here and my heels come off the ground, or my knees dive in like that, then again, I probably have some type of ankle range of motion restriction. There's other reasons that could happen, but for the most part, I'm going to say that you want to check your ankles first if you're making those types of compensations. And finally, the big one is rounding your back. If you have, well, you could have shoulder, ankle, or hip range of motion issues if you're rounding your back. But if you get down like this, and then you start to get that butt wink where you start to round your low back, then you might have some type of a hip range of motion issue. You need to go fix your hips. We have all kinds of mobility resources, and there's a million other mobility resources out there. We're not going to talk about all those things today. If you want to check out ours, you can go to barbellshrugged.com/mobility, and there'll be links to all of our mobility videos if you go to the site. So you can check that out there if you'd like. So again, from the side, good overhead squat looks like this. Bad overhead squat, I could be leaning back, could have my elbows bent, I could round my back at the bottom. My heels could come off the ground if I'm staying vertical. From the front, again, my elbows could be bent, and I'm leaning forward like this where I'm all internally rotated. If my elbow isn't pointing up like that, and it's pointing forward like that, then I probably have some shoulder instability. I'm gonna get some shoulder problems. If my knees ever dive towards each other, or they wobble in and out, again, that's something that is gonna probably wear on your knees over time. You're gonna get some type of, either medial MCL type issue, maybe an ACL issue. You could get some patellar tendon issues. All kinds of things could potentially happen if you're letting your knees wobble in and out, okay? Next thing that I was here with regards to overhead squats is that people wanna do, they wanna do full snatches, but they can't overhead squat at all, but they still snatch anyway. So I'm gonna suggest that even if you don't train the overhead squat a lot, you need to at least be proficient with it before you go do full snatches. So if you can't overhead squat very well, then that's the time where you're gonna practice the overhead squat, where you're actually doing sets and reps of overhead squats just to work on the technique. That way you can go back to doing full snatches. Again, if you have mobility restrictions, you're gonna wanna work on that first before you even need to worry about practicing the movement. But for weightlifters, they probably don't do a lot of overhead squats as far as heavy sets and reps in training. Rather, they're gonna basically make sure that they can do the movement correctly. They're going to train that overhead position with things like snatch balances and heavy full squat snatches. And then as far as making their legs stronger, they're really going to focus on front squats and back squats, because your overhead squat, as far as your leg strength, will probably never be your limiter. If you can snatch it, then you can probably stand up with it during the overhead squat portion of the lift. So CrossFitters, on the other hand, you're going to have to practice overhead squats for like a heavy set of 3 a lot more than someone like a weightlifter would. Weightlifters, for the most part, they don't really do that. If you don't have a rack, then in a lot of CrossFit competitions, this is common, where you might have to do an overhead squat out on the open floor. There's a couple ways that you can go about getting into that overhead squat position. You can either, straight up just snatch it and then you're overhead. You can do a full squat snatch if you need to, or more likely, if it gets heavy, you'll come here, you can power clean it or full clean it. You'll put it behind your neck, you'll widen your grip, and then from there, you can do some type of a snatch grip, push press, a snatch grip jerk. If you want to split, you can. Some people like to split and then get their footing back and then go into their overhead squat position. So those are options if you ever have to do an overhead squat in a competition out on the open floor. To conserve energy, I'd probably recommend the clean and then put it on your back and then go into your overhead squat. Another quick thing, a lot of people complain about getting sore and achy wrists. If I have a super wide grip and my wrist is kind of broken backwards like that and I'm bending forward, then it's going to really start to wear on my wrist. I'm going to get a lot of compression in the back and I'm going to start to get achy wrists over time. Very similar to if I have my elbows dropped down on a front squat or on a thruster or whatever. I'm in this hyperextended wrist position, and that's going to start to give me achy wrists over time. So a couple ways around that. Number one, if you're really wide, if you have the shoulder mobility for it, then you can narrow your grip a little bit. The more straight overhead I'm going to be, the more straight my wrist is going to be. The wider I am, the more I'm going to be cranking my wrist to the side like that. And then the less likely I am to kind of fall out of position and internally rotate my shoulder and then break my wrist to the back like that, again, which is one of the things that starts to make it get achy over time, okay? So you can narrow up your grip if you have good shoulder mobility and you can keep that vertical arm even with a more narrow grip, which is going to be harder than having that wide grip unless you have very good weightlifting leverage. So if you're a person that has a long torso, short limbs, and you're very mobile, then it's going to be easier for you to have a narrow grip. Like we saw Rich Froning at the very end of the 2014 CrossFit Games. He did his last set of overhead squats pretty much like this, and nobody else did it like that because basically nobody else could. Rich has very good mobility and he has very good weightlifting, squatting type leverage. So he's fortunate that he can do it like that. So other thing is if you have poor ankle mobility or you just have long limbs, then it might help to widen your feet just a little bit and toe out a little bit more, and that'll make it where your hips can stay right under you, which keeps you with a very vertical torso, where I can be here and I'm very vertical with my torso, and it's easier on my shoulders and wrists to be in this position compared to if I go from here and I narrow up my feet and I put my toes straight ahead. It's going to be really hard for me to stay all the way vertical. If I'm here, I'm starting to bend over. So you can see here, I'm pretty mobile, but still, I get to the bottom and I start to bend forward. My low back starts to round. I have to start to float my hands behind me like that. And I get out of position because with my mechanics, I have longer limbs, short torso, and even with good ankle mobility, still, it's going to start to push my butt back. And then to keep the bar over my hands, I'm going to have to round and get out of position in order to not drop the barbell if I want to continue to go lower. If I don't continue to go lower, then I'm either going to have good technique, but I'm only going to be able to go halfway down. So if you're a person that has longer limbs, short torso, and especially if you have poor mobility, it's going to help if you can go a little wider with your feet and maybe toe out a little bit more. You have to push your knees nice and wide in order to keep your knees healthy. But you might have to squat like this in order to get into a good position at the bottom of the movement. Okay? So keep that in mind if you're a taller athlete. Okay? That's it for the overhead squat. Again, If you want to check out some of our mobility products, if you're a person that doesn't have adequate either upper body, especially shoulder mobility, hip mobility, or ankle mobility, and you can't get into a good overhead squat position, then go to barbellshrugged.com/mobility to check out those resources. Also, if you want more Technique Quad videos just like this one, you can go to barbellshrugged.com, click the episodes tab at the top of the page. When the drop down comes down, click on Technique Quad. All the videos are on the site in the library.
Don't fuck with it.
I'm guaranteed to fuck with that.
Don't touch the microphone.
Guaranteed to fuck with it. I'm telling you right now.
I'm raising children here.
I won't fuck with this microphone all afternoon. I swear.
Herding cats.
Herding cats, raising children.
Don't touch it,
touch
Chris.
it.
Don't touch it. Don't touch the fucking microphone.
I'm going to
Fall
talk
off
with,
again. Don't touch
talk
it.
with your mother.
Don't touch it.
All right. And we're back. All right. One thing I meant to mention is, so we're talking to one of our guys that are on the team, and he said that a lot of people are on our website, and people are messaging him. We got like a little chat box on the website about some stuff, and he said that people aren't even aware of the stuff we have in our shop. So just so you know, we actually do have some educational courses and stuff in our shop. So if you go to barbellshrugged.com, click that link, you can check that out. So I didn't know, we always tell people to go to the newsletter so that we can email you about that stuff, as well as the podcast and events we have going on. But if you don't do the whole
tell
newsletter
about our
thing,
product,
then go for the
10
shop.
extra wiener in 12 weeks. Tell them about that product.
That's definitely in there.
I was going to jump in and comment about how I actually use a lot of your guys' products in my class, but if I'm more interested in hearing about this product.
Well, Andy.
Natasha's around here somewhere.
Yeah, your girlfriend is around here somewhere. Your girlfriend, or should I say the person who's referring to you as the guy who needs to fucking get off his ass and propose already?
Yeah, right.
I think we should go back to you using our courses in your class.
Yeah.
Copyright infringement, motherfucker.
I've
Pay
actually
us.
been using
I don't remember licensing that out to you.
talk to this guy.
Oh, Doug's like, oh.
I use
Gave it away too easy.
in my upper level, senior graduate level program design class, I used the TechWad videos. So along with learning how to program designs, one of the things about program designs, designing programs is exercise choice.
Right.
And so the assignment is they have to watch one of the videos and they have to compare and contrast two similar type movements. So take a front squat. So compare and contrast a front squat with the cambered bar front squat. When's it better to use? Give me a situation when it's better to use cambered bar. Give me a situation when it's better to use this. And so they have to learn, this is better.
That's one thing they never teach you in fucking strength and conditioning
Well, actually,
classes.
that's what you're
Well,
exactly
except
what your
for
videos
Andy.
do.
Like, why would you want to do something? That's the question. Like,
Yeah.
You have to be able to answer the question. Why are you doing what you're doing? Well, I read it in Muscle Fitness, or I saw it in that fucking blog, or
Right.
so-and-so does it, and that
Or
guy's a great
Klokov
athlete.
did it.
Klokov did it.
I didn't learn any of that stuff in actual class.
Me neither.
In college or in graduate
neither.
school. None of that.
That's what we do in our classes.
If your answer is, well, because you're supposed to, then fuck you, that's the wrong answer.
Well, that's what fucking irritated me about. I'm sure you guys saw the recent. I think Ripito wrote that episode about how basically colleges are fucking worthless now, and my response was, "You haven't been to mine. You haven't been to my class
it
yet
all
because I'm
depends.
doing a lot
It all
of
depends
that
on who
shit.
the professor
Let's
is.
talk majorities.
But you know that once you reach tenure, all your classes go to shit. No, I'm just kidding.
They're already-
now
they're already there.
all the tenured
Not
professors are out there like that.
They're not
I'm
far
just
off,
kidding.
Yeah. We use the maximum mobility in one of them. Teach different screening tools, stuff. We use I make Chris come in and talk at the end of my program design. I spent a semester learning
I
about.
drink a ball of scotch and come on and teach a class.
They spent a semester learning about designing programs, and then Chris comes on at the end and tells them none of that shit matters. It's great.
It's fun.
So yeah, right before we went on our break, we were starting to talk about busting different myths, and you really want to talk about creatine.
Oh yeah, because I was talking about taking creatine for mental acuity, and then, but also the big myth regarding creatine is people are like, oh, I don't take it because I'm not trying to put on weight right now. I'm like,
Supposed to cycle
creatine-
on and off, bro? How are you supposed to cycle off, bro?
So easiest way to think about it is this: there are 4 macronutrients: carbohydrate, fat, protein, alcohol. Right.
yeah,
Which we're drinking.
The easiest way to think about creatine is it is a 5th macronutrient. Okay, it's not right, but it makes you think of it that way. And so I always ask students, do you cycle on and off protein? Do you cycle on and off fat? Then you don't need to cycle on and off creatine.
Having
It's
more
not-
substrate around is a good thing.
Yeah, carbohydrate causes you to store excess water.
Mm-hmm.
If creatine, okay, let's talk biochemistry. Let's have an argument over it. Maybe in the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Carbohydrate does the same thing, arguably more. So whether or not you're taking, it's such a bad understanding of what the purpose of creatine is.
So the whole game
So
of water.
what
thing-
is the
A lot
purpose
people
of
don't know what
creatine?
it is.
Yeah, so it's really effective for about everything. In fact, there's more work going on in creatine in in Parkinson's patients, in cognitive function, in neurological disorders, than there are in strength, power, muscle building. People have stopped asking that question since we were asking that question 15 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I asked it in 8th
It's
grade
that
when I was
well known,
taking
we've
creatine
just-
for the first time.
Yeah, it's that well known. We've just stopped asking questions. And the clinical significance of creatine supplementation is just, it's extraordinary. It's really, really promising
So
stuff.
it does wonders for mental acuity
Yeah.
and for people who might have brain and neurological issues.
Yeah.
What about for strength?
I actually put creatine in the health portion of my classes for that reason. Because
Not the performance.
No, because we know the performance questions.
That was
it's-
answered fucking 15, 20 years ago.
And we wrote a review on that in 2000.
Yeah.
We do, but everyone doesn't. Just
Yeah.
state the obvious for a second and tell us what creatine's
It's very,
for.
very, very effective. It's very effective.
It's dirt fucking cheap.
Yeah.
It's almost free.
So,
We are going to get this out of him.
All right. So what does creatine do for performance athletes?
so the easiest way to think about it is the way that you make energy in your muscle. You make this molecule called ATP. Think of it this way. Whenever you break a bond, it gives off energy, right?
Like a relationship bond.
Yeah,
like an
any bond. Doesn't
emotional
matter.
bond.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. It gives off energy, right?
Yeah, it does.
So there's this molecule called ATP. Most people have an idea what that is. It breaks apart, gives you energy. Creatine is very effective at resynthesizing ATP so you can re-break it and get more energy. It happens to be the easiest chemistry way to get it.
It allows you to fuck more shit up.
Yeah, so it allows you to make energy really, really, really fast. So for strength and power movements, it allows you to do a few more reps or at a little bit faster more frequently. However it wants
if
to
you
be.
do that every session, you do it month to month and year to year, all of a sudden you've
So
done 10 times more
It'll,
work.
it'll
and
make
much
it'll make
stronger.
you maximally strong and maximally fast for a few extra seconds. If you can go
Yeah,
at
sure.
maximum 100% full speed or maximum 100% full strength for a full 6 seconds, maybe it'll stretch it out to 7 or 8 seconds.
Yeah,
So
or think of an example if you're going to do a lot of really heavy sets. So you're going to do 5 or 10 sets of 1 or 2. Maybe it gets you another set,
Yeah,
which
that-
is adding to cumulative work.
Yeah,
so
I tell people
over time.
it's not what you do in
Yeah.
any one time. If
Yeah.
today you're just X% better, it's one little fucking sliver
And-
better because you took creatine.
Right. So
Over
the
the course
majority
of 5 years, you're fucking a beast.
So the
because of that.
majority of the research, again, years ago, showed for strength and power development, it's very effective.
right. So as an example of what you just said, if you're doing a 95% snatch every minute on the minute, maybe normally you could do 3 or 4 sets before you
Sure.
start missing number 5, missing number 6.
Yeah.
Well, maybe if you take creatine, you can hit number 5 and hit number 6, and then you miss 7, 8, 9.
Exactly.
So recovering in between repeated bouts of heavy or fast movements, it'll let you go for a little longer.
And here's
so
what's-
snatch ladders, clean ladders for CrossFitters, that's a fucking awesome supplement.
Yeah,
to have.
and it's actually what people don't appreciate about creatine is it's actually what they call an intracellular buffer.
That's
So
some
it's actually
sexy
going
stuff.
to, think of it this way, it's going to block the accumulation of acid. So it's actually very effective for endurance.
We're going to go
bouts
down
as
that
well.
route too.
We can get
Do
there.
it. Do it. Do it.
We
Go,
should
go,
definitely
go, go,
down that
go.
route.
Oh, we gotta finish all the creatine
This
benefits
is the
first,
biggest
Doug.
myth bust of all.
Yeah.
Go
Hold on,
for it.
Doug. Hold on.
Well,
Hold on.
well,
No,
there's,
no.
it's like a dual one right there. We can run down the muscle and the lactate one.
Okay,
go.
we'll do that.
God,
Do
damn.
it. Do it. Go.
So what do you want to do, muscle or
Well, finish
lactate
creatine.
first?
Finish
Well,
creatine.
so okay, so here's the creatine. A lot of people assume that acid is causing fatigue, and it's just not. It's not how it happens, but it's not helpful. So actually, creatine works as a very good buffer for acid. So it's very good for short anaerobic, 2-3 minute, a minute, 30 seconds as hard as
So
you
if
can.
you're doing
things like
Fran,
that. Yeah,
creatine is going to help your Fran.
yeah, and so that's the probably unappreciated aspect of it.
yeah.
Especially the clinical stuff we also talked about.
So it helps. It helps with power output.
Yeah.
And it helps with mental acuity.
Yeah.
So if you're a CrossFitting rocket scientist, is there any downfall to taking creatine?
It's really, really cheap. It's really
So-
effective,
okay.
and
No real
So
side
there's no
effects
real
at all.
risk.
So what's the
whatsoever.
negative side effects of creatine?
so the slide in my class that shows up says, "Here are all the negative side effects. You ready?" Next slide. that's it.
And yet there are journalists that have written negative
Well,
side effects.
I
right?
saw one in the
Again,
British newspaper like 2
journalists,
months ago.
not scientists.
So yeah, exactly. So here's the deal, and people always cite. I read this in the paper. I read this. Entire football team gets compartment syndrome, or it makes you
When did
blow.
that fucking
So let's talk.
happen?
Let's
By
talk
the
about.
way,
Let's
we're
talk about what's
untrained.
happening
It's
there.
115 degrees outside, and we did way too much. That had nothing to do with it. It was the creatine. You
Hey,
son of a
well, that-
bitch.
I ain't we gotta get
Or
our guys
other
tough, man.
drugs.
We gotta
Or
toughen up on
the entire
field.
football team is juicing, and that's way more likely to
Well, they're all
cause.
hungover.
It's not the creatine.
Yeah.
It's not the
Andy,
creatine.
let's answer this
So-
question. The practical thing for the audience. Like, okay, I should get powerful. I should extend my maximum power and all that shit. What should I do, Coach? How much does that take? When? What's your expert opinion on dosage?
So the basic idea is somewhere in the neighborhood of 0.03 grams
That
per,
seems awfully
per
fucking
kilogram.
precise.
It usually rounds out being about 3 grams to 5 grams for a 170-pound person, something in the neighborhood. I would never suggest calculating it. Just 3, 4, 5 grams.
What
a
about
day.
100
Just take
grams? Is
a
that
scoop.
better, Coach?
Yeah, take a
Eat it.
scoop.
So
Take a
most
scoop and eat it.
most creatine bottles have a 5-gram scoop,
Yeah.
and if
Take
you
it.
take too much, what can happen?
Well, it
What
depends
dangers
on-
lurk in our creatine
Well,
bottles?
what do you mean by too much?
I mean, if you were
Like
supposed to
50
take
grams?
3 grams
Oh,
and
yeah.
you take 5,
Doesn't
what's
matter.
the worst thing that could happen?
No. They've actually done up to tenfold. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go obnoxious,
Probably shit your pants, I imagine.
Maybe.
I mean, and you may
You will
not
beta
you may
out.
not have heard this,
You
but
will
there's some
beta out.
speculation that creatine does cause a little bit of myostatin inhibition.
Oh, geez.
And
Don't even get me started.
just real quick, but there's a theory that if you were to take up to 60 grams a day
Let me tell you-
throughout the day, like spaced out, that it
And
would.
let me tell you where that theory is not coming from. It's not coming from people that are measuring myostatin. I can tell you that. Nobody that does that work is saying that. No, that's no.
Oh man, I can't wait! I can't wait for the comments.
All right, so let's go down the buffering track.
Yeah.
So tell us about lactic acid and what's correct about that and what's not correct about that.
So almost nothing is correct about lactic acid. That is common acknowledged.
So what's the theory first of all,
So,
and then you can bust
can I
it.
Tell us all about the bullshit
Let me
first.
go back to 1880 or so, Germany.
1880.
Let me tell you kids
Yeah.
a story.
Yeah.
Shit!
I want to tell you guys how
I'm so
lactate.
glad it's going this far back.
So this is what happens when you drink scotch and you're a real science nerd. You look these stuff up and you end up buying paperbacks on Amazon for $3 that went out of publish 100 years ago. Anyways, the original work on lactate came from deer stags. So,
Sounds
it's a
hot.
stag. Yeah, they hunted. What they realized is when we kill a stag and it's been hunted, there's a lot more lactate in the muscle. All right, it's been sprinting for its life. Therefore, lactate must be causing fatigue.
And that's what we killed the thing.
120 years later, we still have that same idea, even though 60 years of science has showed us quite the opposite. In fact, lactate is probably the single most preferred fuel source in your body. If I IV'd you right now, put glucose or sugar in one of your arms and put lactate in the other, your body would pick lactate as a fuel. Not only does it not cause fatigue, it's an incredibly powerful form of sugar. That's essentially what it is. It's one step away from sugar. And your body much prefers that. There's a guy just down the road, actually.
So how do we produce lactate?
Can you put all that in a pill form? I'll take it. Can I
Yeah.
inject it in my arm.
So I'll make this real simple for you. Sugar is 6 carbons. When you go through this process called glycolysis or splitting sugar, it gets broke into 2 separate 3-carbon molecules. We call those pyruvate. Pyruvic acid. Remember this stuff?
Now,
It's
yeah,
all
I
coming
remember.
back
I
to me
remember when
now.
I was younger
Now.
taking pyruvate for this reason, but then is that effective?
No.
Okay, go.
Close. So now we're at 2 3-carbon molecules. We want to metabolize or break those bonds like I talked about earlier
Yeah.
to get energy. Well, if I don't have enough oxygen to send these 3-carbon molecules down the road through metabolism, there's actually hydrogen floating around. And so I bind a hydrogen to that 3-carbon molecule. That is lactate. It's pyruvate with a hydrogen on it. That's all it is. So in fact, what lactate is, it's a pyruvate that is held, because if you're not familiar, hydrogen is acid. That's what pH, potential hydrogen, right? So lactate actually is pyruvate that is holding on to acid. It's stopping you from becoming acidic. So the more lactate you have, the more you are stopping yourself from becoming acidic. That's the point.
It's capturing it. It's
Yeah.
like a,
And so the easy way to think about it is, and I ask my students, okay,
filter.
so if you could think of one thing in the world, you had all this H plus floating around. What do you think of that binds really well, and you don't have to know chemistry to know this answer. What binds really well to hydrogen?
oxygen.
Oxygen, and makes
Water.
water. Fantastic. So now I've got pyruvate with a hydrogen attached to it, and I want to get back to pyruvate because pyruvate's sugar, right? Think of it that way. What am I going to do? I'm going to take a big, huge, deep breath and bring in.
Oxygen.
Right, fantastic. I'll bind that oxygen to that hydrogen. I make water, and then I send my pyruvate through as in metabolism. So lactate actually is a fuel. It gets sent to your heart, actually gets sent to other muscle, it gets sent to the liver. It's a fuel, and it's blocking you from becoming acidic. It's tremendously important. Why the mistake? Why? Is there a correlation between fatigue and lactate? Of course.
I was laughing because some asshole killed a
Right.
deer and came up with this whole thing that we all just buy as undisputable
Right.
fucking training truth.
Well,
It's
you know how I
ridiculous.
learned this lesson? Actually, fun story. During my doctorate, we had to take our comprehensive exams, and one of the guys on my list was a guy named Per Tesh, who's one of these original researchers, right? Did bodybuilding, fiber typing years ago. And his question was, you have 8 hours, tell me about lactate. And I was like, okay,
Wow.
filled like 30 minutes, and I was done. And I got a huge lecture for him about all this stuff, and go back and find this, go back and find this. You don't understand
Yeah.
lactate. You're going to have a doctorate in bioenergetics. You don't understand this single most misunderstood ion or enzyme.
Mm-hmm.
Boom,
Well, fuck
lesson
me.
learned.
I guess
So-
I'll go back and read.
Lesson learned.
So instead of calling it lactic acidosis or whatever, a lot of people call it metabolic acidosis because
Yeah.
it's more technically correct. So when people discuss doing lactate intervals or something like that, that uses that term, like what's the correct way to talk about all that? How do you use it when you're talking to athletes?
Well, here's the easy way to think about it. In the end, it doesn't matter. Call it whatever you want, as long as you're communicating what you want your athlete to do. It doesn't really matter if you have the right terminology. So you can call it lactate. It's the same thing, putting yourself in a state of really high lactate. Well, that's actually happening. It's just not the cause of fatigue. So call it lactate. That's why I always laugh
So
at when people call it Metcon, right? That's the CrossFit term.
Metabolic
I always want to
conditioning.
respond, can you explain to me a type of conditioning that's not metabolic? It's all metabolic conditioning.
Just
you
might
check
be
out.
a
That's-
different metabolic pathway.
Yeah, and it's
But
not,
they're usually referring
cool,
to-
Andy, okay? It sounds fucking cool.
it's
and
not
that's
even
why
a
we
different.
like it.
It's not even a different pathway. It's
You
the
know,
same
you don't have to
one.
have evidence for everything, Andy.
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
not everything has to be in your fucking scientific ivory tower. We like the word Metcon, dude. We like the fucking word Metcon, okay? And WOD.
I don't-
We like to blow our WOD, okay? Is that so bad? Is that fucking bad with you?
I don't jazz people back. It doesn't matter. Again, as long as you're communicating with your athlete, it doesn't matter.
So what's causing the fatigue?
So that's a great question. We have no idea. No idea.
There-
There's some
hey,
ideas
that's a sign of somebody who's telling you the truth.
yeah.
When you ask them a question, they go, I don't know.
Well, we certainly know this. Enzymes, those are the things that make energy. They don't work when they're in really acidic environments. Great example. You guys make guac, right? Of course, there's some right over there.
Oh, God.
You
Guac.
take your
Now I'm
avocado, you
hungry.
cut it in half, open it up, right? And what's the main macronutrient in avocados?
Fat?
Fat. Okay,
Delicious
what happens?
fucking delicious fat.
Yeah, what happens when you put oxygen around fat?
Oxidation.
Same thing happens in here that's happening on the avocado. It's literally the same process. It's being oxidized. It's radical oxidant. It's oxidative stress. That's all the same word. Okay? So what do you do to make your guacamole not turn brown?
Pour delicious lime
Acid.
juice all over that shit, homie.
And what's lime juice?
It's acid.
Citric acid.
Citric acid. Enzymes don't work in acid. So if I put your muscle in acid, it doesn't metabolize your fat. If I put your guacamole in acid, it doesn't metabolize that fat either. It's literally the same thing.
So how do we metabolize fat? What's the most effective way to metabolize
So
fat?
I shouldn't inject lemon juice.
You should inject lemon. I actually get asked that question a lot. What if I drink lemon juice all day? I'm like, it doesn't.
What's
whatever.
wrong with you? That's what you. What's wrong with you,
I
kid?
don't care.
Oh, you weirdo, man.
Just eat it. It doesn't matter. So you're not and so what's causing fatigue is the question. Acidosis does not help.
Right. I was thinking, Dr. Andy
but there
said
are other
never eat citrus fruit.
Right, there are other things that with the way that the muscle works. So remember that ATP molecule I told you? There's a thing that suggests that maybe that phosphate, so it gets broken into ATP, which is triphosphate, into diphosphate, and one more phosphate. There's an idea that one additional phosphate or inorganic phosphate causes fatigue. There's a bunch of ideas, but the real answer is we really, really don't know what's exactly happening. There's an idea that it's actually central. So the neurological system is shutting you down before muscle actually wants to shut down.
Protection.
Yeah, whatever.
Would that be, what people call CNS fatigue?
Oh my God! Don't get me. That's a worse one than lactate.
We're going.
Oh my
No,
God!
let's do it.
Another myth.
Let's do it. No,
Go
I was,
right into it.
I was throwing it at you. Go for it.
Yeah, no, it's there is no question that the neurological system can sort of get overwhelmed and shut down. But the
Wait,
thing,
what is CNS fatigue? Explain that briefly. Like, what do people think it is?
so the basic idea
Before we
is
bust it, we got to say what it is.
yeah, that the central nervous system can be trained independently.
What's the central nervous system?
So that would be basically your brain,
What is your brain?
the spinal cord, and the spinal cord and your brainstem.
Your nerves run into your muscles and tell them what to do.
No, it gets frustrating sometimes when people come to
Yeah.
me and go, "Oh, I was experiencing too much CNS fatigue."
Yeah.
And I go,
Oh
I go,
my God.
I,
Because they read that shit on a blog.
and I'm like,
man.
Right?
I'm like, I saw what you did for training. You didn't suffer from CNS fatigue.
No.
If you were in
And-
nature, you'd be fucking dead in 2 seconds and
Exactly.
we'd be through with you.
There's
Evolution
no-
would take you out with that
and
talk.
there's no question that the spine and the brain will sort of fatigue in that fashion. But muscles getting a whole lot of fatigue there too. The basic idea that irritates me is people think you can train your spinal cord or your brain to fatigue, but your muscles completely fine, and that those things can be trained independently. That there's a central it's not my muscle, it's my central nervous system. Wow, take intro physiology class. There is no central nervous system training that trains muscle differently than it trains central nervous system. You got fatigued, fantastic. There's no difference there. It's again, it's one of those things I just go, roll my eyes when coaches say it. As long as you're communicating the right message, I don't care if you understand the physiology, if you're
And
programming.
it does make me wonder sometimes whether coaches are using that terminology to explain to
Absolutely.
athletes, knowing that it's not the exact right
Well,
thing.
they probably don't, but who cares?
It sounds sexy, and I guess as long as they get
Yeah.
it, no harm, no foul.
No, I mean, you get the idea of like, and I won't mention a name here, but a friend of ours I remember one day was like, it was an off day. And he was like, oh, I'm just going to do a bunch of really heavy deadlifts. Just train the central nervous system so my muscle's fine tomorrow. And I was like, whoa.
Repeat that.
You do heavy deadlifts so you don't train your muscles?
No. That is not how it
Have
works.
you deadlifted before?
Yeah. Yeah, that is not how it
I
works.
usually get really sore.
Yeah, that's not there. And then the other one was the muscle.
Yeah, it's
Muscle
talk about
mass.
that. We don't know why people get tired. Is it because we're too fucking jacked, Andy?
Well, this happens a lot with MMA fighters and boxers. And they actually believed it at one time with baseball players, and that's
It sounds like the muscle-bound argument.
Like if you look,
Inflexible.
It's about that asinine.
all you gotta do is go back to like the 70s and 80s, and baseball players want to lift weights, and the coaches were like, no, you'll get too muscle bound. But Barry Bonds fucking nails home runs. And
why are steroids important?
It's
Why
the-
would you
it's
even
the
do it
fatigue
to
thing.
hit dingers? Why would you want it?
It's the fatigue thing that Doug and I were talking about earlier, that the idea that if you get too much muscle, well, you're going to get tired faster. And like that's such a very bad understanding of how physiology works on any level. The idea that having too much muscle is bad. What'd you say earlier? Really? Watch the CrossFit Games.
Yeah, those dudes are buff as shit, and they have amazing work capacity, and they're mobile.
Yeah.
They're shooting holes in all those arguments. Like, I feel like people watch MMA, and they see, like, this one dude who happens to be buff, and he happens also to be out of shape, and then they say because he has muscle, he's out of shape.
One fucking guy
instead of
bench presses too much before a fight. And
I'll
he
give
ruins
you
it for
I'll
everybody.
give you a great example. Jake Ellenberger, one of the guys I work closest with. He is, his biggest professional issue is, he gets a little bit tired. He's had some fatigue issues, and he's really, really, really muscular. He's unbelievably powerful. And so it's like, man, all this muscle. Like, man, you just don't get it. We were talking earlier. I'll give you 3 arguments on this. Number 1, just look at the athletes. Look at a George St. Pierre. Look at a Sean Shirk. Arguably 2 of the fittest
Sean
guys.
Shirk is like the jackest dude.
They're so unbelievably jacked, but they never get tired because they train that way, because they're genetically different that way. It
Bob
has
Sapp gets
nothing-
tired because he's huge, because he's just huge. He
400
doesn't fucking
pounds.
work out.
And he doesn't
he's not
train.
conditioning.
Yeah, he doesn't
You can be
train.
strong as shit and muscular, but also do your conditioning,
The
man.
problem
Yeah.
is these guys are big and they fatigue quickly because all their training goes towards getting
Getting big.
and none of it
Not-
has to do with
That's
endurance.
the fucking problem.
That's the problem.
That's
Training
the
is
issue.
imbalanced.
And you think of it this way. So, without making math too crazy, take an athlete who's 6'5", right? And they're 200 pounds.
Asia Barto. Well, he's heavier than that.
6'5", 200. So say they have 150 pounds of muscle on their body, just to make numbers easy. Now, if I take somebody, instead of making them 6'5", make them 5'8", put the same numbers on them, they both still have 150 pounds of muscle. But why is it we look at the 5'5" guy and you're too muscle bound, you're gonna get tired? He's got the same amount of muscle as that guy. He's just distributed it differently.
He's just harder to take down.
Yeah, like it doesn't make any sense. In addition, the last comment I'll make on that is, any idea where at in your body metabolism or the way that you produce energy, do you know where that physically happens at?
I'm going to guess the muscles.
It's in muscle. Yeah. So if you want to produce some
fooling
energy, you need muscle mass.
And plus, it still does that. It still does that force stuff.
Well, you get the argument. Well, look at the endurance athletes. You never see a super buff endurance athlete. You
Because they
also
train like shit.
they also run a bajillion hours a week,
Well,
and
all
they
their-
don't eat and they don't train, and they're genetically really, really good at that.
None of them are strength
Yeah.
training for hours on end every week.
And
They do it, they touch it a little bit.
And
but
you
they-
have a nature-nurture issue there where
Yeah.
the really high-level ones are really good at that because
Yeah.
they've been built to have a certain mass to tendon stiffness ratio. They're able to produce a whole lot of force with very little energy to get there. So it's just a really silly argument.
Wait, how's that work? That's something we don't talk about very much on the show at all.
Yeah, so
we do talk about
This is
stiffness, just
actually-
not tendon stiffness.
I'm so stiff right now.
this is one of the issues we worked with the UFC guys on a lot.
Yeah, we don't talk about snap to give you a Mark Verstegen.
Yeah, right. Pop bank, yeah, whatever he does. The issue is there's a lot of ways to produce. So in my lab, we study muscle at the single cell level. So we pull one muscle fiber. We take a biopsy. In fact, I've taken a biopsy of Mike.
Your first muscle biopsy.
much-
How
out
was
of
his
my
touch?
leg.
Was his touch gentle?
Well, his tissue resembled something of an older woman. Something like that. But we take.
He had to
tissue
take 2 out because he didn't get the first one in. I was like, no, Andy, you got to push more this way. Yeah.
No, I remember the needle's like halfway in, and I'm like, I think I'm there, and he's like, "You're not in, you're not in." And I'm like, I
Because
can't
I could
tell you
feel how it's supposed to. I knew
how
how,
many
it's supposed
years
to feel.
I've been waiting for you to tell me that I'm in.
And
then-
you know it because it's that weird like pressure, like
Oh, yeah.
like not a pain, but like, oh God, what is that?
And I remember, for some reason, I'm looking at his face. I'm not looking at his leg that I'm jamming this gigantic needle
As you
in.
go, that satisfying
he's like,
last push into the hole.
You're not in, you're not in, you're not in. You're in, you're in. All right.
Snap it and get the fuck out.
But we study muscle at one cell at a
Petted
time.
him after. Is it okay? You want to try again? Or
So we publish all this research on what happens on one cell at a time, and then people make these extrapolations to whole muscle performance.
Right.
And we're like, whoa. Like, there's a lot more in muscle than one cell. There's the connective tissue. There's the connective tissue around the entire muscle. There's the tendon and ligament. And one of the things that we do with the MMA guys is we try to test and tease out their muscle force versus their tendon and elastic response, because they're different. So somebody can be really, really strong, but poor elastic. I'll give you an easy example of how we do that. So I'll make them do a vertical jump from a static squat position. So I'm going to take the tendon and elastic component out of it, no counter movement, start from a half squat straight up. And then they get to do a counter movement. They get a dip and drive. And then I make them do the same thing off of a box. In fact, I got this from old...
this is my researcher shit I was doing.
Yeah, old stuff from Bud Charniga.
Yeah.
His old translated stuff on their numbers and the old Russians, what the numbers should be. And we use that, and so you jump off of a box, and now we're looking at how you land and go back up. So now it's really elastically driven. And we want to look at, and shocking enough, a lot of these guys produced a tremendous amount of force, jumped really, really high from a static position. But when I had them give a counter movement, they didn't jump any higher. Which you should jump way higher. And so my immediate reaction is, we got to work on more reactive, explosive stuff.
That's my weakness, too. I can sit down the bottom, like on a low box, and jump, and then not really jump that much better. That's why it's one of the things that it'll make me perform better, is just doing more of the reversing.
And how funny it is, my whole life, so I was a competitive weightlifter, and my always sort of joke with me is, if I couldn't front squat something, I would just clean it and then try to front squat it.
Yeah.
Because I could clean almost as much.
I tell people that sometimes. I'm like, I actually know a guy that can clean more than he can front squat. And they're like,
and it took
power clean or clean? I was like, clean.
Yeah, and it took this dumb giraffe years to figure out, like, when I was working with these guys actually, and I went, maybe I should do some more pause squatting, because I am very bad at producing force. I rely entirely on my elastic response.
That's why box squatting is good, too.
Exactly. And so now I started doing that stuff, and wow, the gap got much better. But that's how we use sort of the idea that there's a lot of things producing force that are outside.
You remind me of all the research I used, like that's the last time I did research was.
But it's how you can use research and science to actually help performance a little bit. So some of these, we had them doing a little bit more, and we're just talking not like a 24-inch box jump, like off of a 4-inch or 6-inch thing, landing and going. And in their sport, it's sort of like, okay, imagine a guy's pressing you in the cage. You got to back up a few steps and then lunge back at him. You can't do that right now because you get sort of stuck in the hole.
Yeah.
You got no elastic. We did that, and now their lives, a week.
Speed is really important. Like when I did my thesis, one thing I did, I borrowed Louis Simmons' weight releasers. I went up there and trained for a week. I said, hey, dude, I'm doing my thesis. You mind if I take your equipment out of here and just never come back? That's the kind of guy. That's why anybody talks shit about Lou, I go, look, okay, you can have your ideas, but the guy is so kind. Like, he just let me take his shit and go back to Memphis. Did a study where we did jump squats. So you lowered a certain percentage of your max. These weight releases would hit the ground, and the weight pops off the barbell, and you just fucking jump. We had this awesome thing. I wrote a little thing, and I got money from the NSCA wearing a T-shirt. God bless those guys. What the fuck are they doing now? They gave me a couple grand. I bought a...
Getting sued.
What was that thing?
Shit, right?
What was that thing we bought?
I've been in some fun meetings with the NSCA.
What was that thing we bought? It was a barbell suspended in an apparatus where if you let go of the barbell, the circuit opens.
Catches the bar.
The thing catches the bar, so you can jump with weight and land with your body weight. It's really cool. What we found is it didn't matter how much weight you added to the bar. We thought, well... These things, people use this shit. What's going on? You lower the weight, it kicks off, and you jump. But really, that didn't matter. What mattered was the speed at which you lower. You get down quicker to stretch things.
And that's the part that irritates me whenever I work with my students that are coaches or other coaches. They're like, well, we just did this actually. I had John Cronin from New Zealand up in our lab.
I almost went to work with him, man.
Yeah, and he had visited Cal, and he went to Stanford and all these other places. Then he came down to us, and he was like, you guys are the first people that are actually using any semblance of science, because he went up there and he's like, the coaches were like, well, we're coaches, we're not researchers, we don't read that shit.
Bullshit, dude.
And he was like, and I was like, well, this is how we're doing it, we're trying to, and there's tough, and you can't be both for sure, but you can't just pass off the researchers, wow, this is, they don't know what the fuck, all the researchers, boy, they've never lifted before, they don't know. Like, yes, we have. We're trying to do shit.
Like I was barking about, hey, get out there with your lactate and your goddamn central nervous system fatigue. Like that's what they go do. Like, it'd helpful if you learn the evidence. It'd be very good for you if you learn something.
I mean, you gotta let the evidence build up over time too.
Absolutely.
The other mistake, because the other side of the coin is people find one study and they, that one, like you're looking at that one cell or something, and they extrapolate it out to the entire human body.
Yeah.
Yeah, so on and so forth. So there's got to be that happy medium.
No,
it's good to look at the research. If there's been 60 studies done on this thing and all in agreement, and it's been peer reviewed and all that, and that's good. But but on the flip side, people take single studies, take it way too far. So you've got to be smart about how you read.
It's the edifice.
Things,
it's the edifice. You got to wait for a wall to be built of information before you can really make. And exactly. You take one thing, you get okay, maybe there's something here, but you wait until there's really. But then you still have to be very, very, very careful about taking basic single cell or whatever oxidative stress and applying it to the human condition. There's a big, big, big jump there.
Well, also, if you're not a researcher, but you are very experienced and you understand research, then you don't necessarily have to read the part of the research where they're interpreting the data. Not that you can't read it, but you don't necessarily have to read it. You can read like the methods and the results and look at the data, and then with your own experience and intelligence, you can interpret the data however you see fit. You say, oh, I understand why that happened like that. Oh, that makes sense about what I've been doing, what I've seen in the world.
Read the methods, because
if you only have a little don't read the abstract conclusion.
And you have to look at the actual data. You don't just read the abstract, and you don't just look at what the researcher wrote as the conclusion. You have to do it yourself if you really want to know what's going on.
Yeah, that conclusion might have some bias.
I published a paper 3 or 4 years ago called Guiding Coaches Through Science.
Yeah.
And it was for coaches, and the idea was that.
You're like Carl Sagan.
Can we get that? Can we get that link?
At?
We need to have that linked off of our blog.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes on the website.
You know what? My first piece of advice: what to do with the introduction? Throw it away. Don't read it. It's not information. Methods.
It's what you do so you can start talking about what matters.
Yeah.
You got to do this awkward rambling.
You're trying to sell.
You pick 10 random articles, you reference them, you throw something together that works. You're trying to.
Well, for us, it's grant money. We're trying to convince people to fund our work.
Yeah.
So it's not for you guys to read. Don't
read the intro.
If you are brand new and you don't know shit about that paper, then you can read the intro because it'll fill you in. But if you're experienced and you already have a lot of intelligence about that area, then you can probably skip it.
But be careful, because the intro is guided. I'm trying to convince you why you should read my paper. I'm not giving you like the full, unabashed. Here's all the stuff. Here's the pro. Yeah. I'm giving you like
it's not unbiased.
It's a sales pitch.
Yeah.
It's a sales pitch.
It's selective referencing.
Read the methods, and there are certain parts you just throw out. Don't read. Read these few results. Here's how to get to them, and then the discussion, just like you said, throw it out too. Because this is speculation. I think it maybe happened because of this. I think it happened because of that. Maybe this happened. Hell, I don't know.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But so don't read that shit. Exactly what you said. Read the
Methods,
results.
data.
You make your decision. Boom, out.
Yeah.
By page 2 of your discussion, you're like, what else can I say about this shit?
Get the research, and you don't take, like you said, you don't take that one paper and be like, okay, that's it. I'm now going to take X.
Right.
Whoa.
Come on, athletes. Let's jump off the cliff.
That actually happens the most with supplements.
Oh, God.
They're like, there's one study, and then they want to take. I mean, that's what I do. But
you took that the lizard shit after that.
Yeah, I took I mean, and it works. But
deer antler piss and
bro,
I read the study. Should I be taking deer antler?
Yeah, 1 or 2 studies doesn't really do it. We were talking about creatine earlier. There's been fucking hundreds,
the most
700s,
research,
1,000.
Creatine and caffeine.
Creatine and caffeine.
Yeah.
Go to examine.com and go, oh shit.
The numbers are in the tens of thousands on that. Tens of thousands.
And so there's a preponderance of evidence. We know what the fuck we're talking about when it comes to caffeine.
That's why I kind of roll my eyes when you said it. I'm like, do we really want to take time talking about this shit? But I guess
because
we're up there, but
people are listening to journalists, and that's the problem.
Yeah, it's not for us. It's for
get off creatine's
whoever happens
dick.
to be listening.
Yeah, it's
get off it.
Oh, it's probably time to wrap this show up. I think we could probably go on for hours.
Well, we will.
We're gonna do
camera.
We'll do BLEDSOE and Barbell Shrugged tonight. We'll we'll get the more alcohol going.
We're gonna switch over to tequila if that's gonna happen.
I'll make Corvette Summers tonight, man. We'll have a good fucking time.
I love Corvette Summers.
Oh, that's my signature cocktail.
All right, guys, make sure to go to Barbell. Wait, you know what? I'm gonna be a gentleman here.
What do you want to plug, Andy?
Andy, what do you want?
Well, I don't have an Instagram because I haven't been educated. Maybe I'll make one now.
He got berated when he showed up for not having one. You have a show on Fox?
Yeah, actually, by the time this airs, it'll be gone. But you guys can probably watch it. We filmed an episode of Countdown to the Octagon. So the preview for like the UFC events that they do.
Yeah.
We filmed that at my lab with some of the guys' portion of it, which aired on Fox yesterday, which was awesome. I got bombarded by the university. The PR and media people, they're blowing up because
they love you.
The Fox people told me we'll count the viewership in the millions.
Pay me, motherfucker.
Yeah.
We're gonna send you dozens more people.
He didn't wear
Did you
a Barbell
guys see that
Shrugged
though?
shirt. Can't believe it.
If you guys caught that, I've been working with Kevin James for a while, like the actor.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
And the last day we filmed his last movie in Vegas, so I've been back and forth in Vegas for the last few months,
Yeah.
and I happen to be wearing my Barbell Shrugged shirt, and we took like a last day photo.
Mm-hmm.
Can you get Kevin on our podcast?
Yeah, he's awesome, man. He's tremendous. He's in Toronto with Adam Sandler in the next movie, but
Bring him on. Let's
we
go.
can work it out.
Get Adam Sandler. So Adam,
Yeah.
how does training help you do whatever the fuck it is you do on camera? You call this shit movies. How
No,
does it
but
help?
Kevin's crazy. You guys could get because Kevin could have been a national or higher than national level weightlifter.
Really?
He's in his 50s. He overhead pressed, what was it, 280 for 20
What?
on a machine.
Kevin
on a
James.
on a machine.
Okay,
on a
about to say,
machine.
come on.
On a
All
machine.
right, I mean-
but it's the hammer strength independent, so
Yeah.
it's a
Still, I mean, that's not
Still heavy.
That's not weak.
That's a lot of
he
reps.
did.
I'm
He
about to
did,
say, Kevin James is one of the strongest men in the fucking world.
He did. The,
Klokov can't press like that'd be his number. Like
He did the
Klokov
indi-
like
he did the independent leg press, 380 for 32 or something. I just said stop. He's unbelievable.
He played football and stuff.
And he's in his
He was an
50s. He
athlete.
wrestled, yeah, a
wrestled
little
as
bit.
well.
Wow.
He's unbelievable.
Didn't see that one coming.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so
we got
you
that up there, but
got the Fox Sports.
Yeah, so
the
we got that
UFC,
stuff on there.
The Octagon. What's it called? What's the show called again?
This
this
is Key
one
Podcast.
was
Come on,
called
let's
Road to the Octagon.
Road to the Octagon.
Yeah.
All right, where can people find you on Twitter?
It's at Dr. Andy Galpin. So Dr. Andy Galpin, just Dr.
And after we force you to do Instagram, what's your name going to be?
Oh,
Hopefully the same
probably
thing.
keep it something like that. I don't know. You guys will have to tell me.
It's
what to
tough
do
if
with
you
that.
don't have the same matching thing because
Yeah.
Twitter doesn't like Instagram because they didn't let them buy them, and
I don't even have
an
a
issue.
phone that I can do that stuff on.
So,
yet.
anyways, we're gonna get you an Instagram account after this. Hopefully, it'll be the same thing. Maybe we'll link it on the show notes.
Actually, one last thing. I have had multiple people now contact me from the first couple episodes
Mm-hmm.
that watch this and are now going to be coming to school with us, or that are doing projects with us. We have some people come in and visit the lab, bring their kids and stuff.
You're welcome.
That had 15-year-old kids interested in
Yeah.
stuff. So I'm happy to do that stuff too. So if you guys are interested in maybe pursuing education, we do real applied, cool science, but real applied stuff.
There's
Yeah,
not a lot
that's-
of people. There's not a lot of places in the United States where you can go and get a legit
Yeah.
fucking sports science degree. This should be on your list. Like
Yeah, we-
this, East Tennessee
I mean,
State.
we offered a degree in strength and conditioning. We have a master's degree in strength and conditioning. Like you said, I never in my life took a class in strength and conditioning. We have a bunch. Like we teach graduate level, undergraduate level classes in strength and conditioning. So if that's what you're interested in,
we get hit up a lot from people going, "Hey, should I even go to school? Where should I go? All this kind of stuff." And I'm like, a lot of times I'm like, you know what? It all depends on where you go to school. Sometimes school's not the right answer. Sometimes it is. And if you know you're going to do something like exercise science, kinesiology, this is one of those schools where you're going to be able to get a good education there. Not the schools with I don't, and this probably goes with like every degree program there is. They're vastly different from school to school when it comes to kinesiology, exercise science. But we do know that at Cal State it's good.
Cal State Fullerton. There's 26 Cal
Sorry.
States.
Yeah, don't just go pick a random college
No.
without visiting it. When we were thinking
yeah.
about doing our PhDs and we were traveling around to different universities, checking out the programs, some of them you just were like, "Fuck, there's no
Not
way."
to put too much
I'm
pressure
going
on
to
it,
that-
but if you
that
pick the
college.
wrong school, you'd
Don't
be
choose
broke the
the
rest of your life.
university. Don't choose the university based on geography.
Oh, God.
Look at the programs.
Can you
please.
record that and play that in my class?
Oh, man.
Every one of my students. Oh, I want to go to school. I'm not leaving Orange County though. Yeah. Great. I went to Memphis. Like, why did you ever leave and go to Memphis from Seattle?
Because you met because all of us were
These
there at the same
jackasses.
time. Like, read the list of people who were hanging out doing research in Memphis during those years. Just
Speaking
fucking
of which,
putting in work.
I'll say this
Everyone that
last
left that program and were hanging out at that time are all doing really cool things in strength and conditioning.
Guess who I saw last week?
Who'd you see?
The Panda Bear himself.
You saw Lauren Shue?
Lauren Shue.
What was
Oh,
Lauren
really?
doing?
No
man?
way.
He was in Vegas. We hung out, had
I
some
haven't
cigars
seen
and scotch.
Dr. Shue.
Let me
in
guess what
just
he's
like
doing
2
in Vegas.
That was
Put
management
Lauren on the
conference.
show.
Yeah.
We do need Lauren on the
That
show.
dude's fantastic. He's very opinionated, which is
He's
awesome.
Oh,
hilarious.
boy.
We should just talk about kettlebells.
I remember we used
Tear
to
him
get
up.
in such epic. He's the smartest guy I think I've ever met. This
Yeah.
guy is just. He's like a Garhammer type. He could have been a PhD in physics. For some reason, he dug lifting weights and weightlifting. He wanted to master.
Well, he came out here and got his PhD from George Salem at USC. Yeah, biomechanics.
he's a master of biomechanics. This guy's
Yeah.
brilliant as fuck. But we used to so get, because I'm like the brash, fat, wide stance squatting powerlifter. He's the by the book, physics based, way out
Right.
there. And we used to just hang out all the time. Like we would sit in the lab, drink Diet Code Red Mountain Dew, like fucking by the case, like every day.
Oh my god.
You had to bring in
Buy the book.
They're not nutritionists, physiologists.
Every day you had to bring.
Biomechanists.
We would go through a case of Diet Code Red every fucking day while we were sitting there just slicing muscle tissue every day, man.
You have to to keep you guys
In the
some
fitness lab.
Yeah, like crushing
in
it.
the locker
And Dr.
room.
Schilling was no better. He drank that shit too. Don't let him fool you. And then I tried to get him to go down the tab route because at the time I was like had a mean
Oh,
addiction.
I
to
never
Dr.
heard of
Schilling had
tab till you.
35 and changed everything.
Yeah,
I never heard of tab till you brought me to that.
Tab.
But
If you want to have a problem, you start drinking Tab. You're gonna be fucking hooked.
Keep this perspective in mind. So when we got there, it was you were die-hard powerlifting. Lauren Shue was his opinionated everything. We're over here, and so it was just mutual hatred amongst everybody. These fucking powerlifters are so stupid. They don't know anything.
And we all train in
It's
the same
belts.
weightlifting room.
Yeah, they're cheating, and then he's over there. Yeah, well, we're putting 1,000 pounds on our back, eat shit, And then all of a sudden, Mike was like, "Hey, I want to get into this CrossFit stuff." And we're like, "What the fuck?
Hey.
You!" And everybody hated you.
Everyone teamed up against me. They were like, that CrossFit
God.
thing is stupid. I was like, it's fun. Don't worry about
There was
it.
a lot of mutual love hatred going on there,
Well,
mostly hatred.
things have come a long way since then. Can you fucking believe how popular Olympic weightlifting's gotten?
Yeah.
In this country, it's amazing.
Yeah,
Was
I
there
can.
over 350 athletes at the American Open, new world record, I think, for weightlifting meets, and then
We
the
hosted-
nationals
Yeah, I was
this
gonna
year
say.
We
just
just
broke
host-
it again with like 500 athletes or something.
We hosted
was
the
huge.
largest ever local meet last spring here in my weightlifting club.
Yeah.
We had 182
Yeah.
registered lifters or something over 3 days. Just
And don't pretend that wasn't
Unbelievable.
because of CrossFit. It was.
No, I
You can talk all the shit.
No, I'm
you
not
want
talking to
about
you.
CrossFit.
There's a lot of people out there.
If
There's-
that's all they ever did, that was good. It means I will never talk shit about them ever. I mean, they reinvented weightlifting for us.
Without getting too far, pushing this podcast along too far, I get asked a lot about that. What do you think about CrossFit? Without going too far, I say that to the USA people, USAW people, I say the same thing. Like, we've doubled in a few years. Like,
yeah.
you have a lot of people exercising a lot. They're trying really hard, and they're changing a lot of their lifestyle. I've been on ESPN, probably 12 different episodes of different interviews about CrossFit. Pros and cons, hurting people, all that garbage. And I sound like this huge CrossFit proponent. And in fact, I was on a radio show, and a guy called in one time and said, "We'd like to know what Dr. Galpin's affiliation with CrossFit officially is." And I said, "None. I've actually literally never done it.
Yeah.
I've never done CrossFit, never competed, never."
Oh,
won.
wait. That's
Right.
a lie because you did Fight Gone Bad once. And you
Oh,
actually,
yeah,
I had
that's
a
right,
pic-
with
you
Nizal.
you
Yeah.
crushed it.
Yeah.
We have pictures together. You and me.
He was like,
flexing.
"Oh, I don't do any conditioning, just weightlifting." He came in and just fucking.
Well, my response to
Your
that
score
question
was phenomenal.
on live was, yeah, I've done a lot of push-ups. I've done a lot of burpees in my life. I've pressed barbells, thrown medicine balls. I guess I've never done CrossFit, done it my whole life. I don't, what the...
Or maybe you did
the basic-
CrossFit your whole life and you didn't know it.
Right, and the basic argument is CrossFit's the name of a company, not an exercise program. But to come back to sort of the original point, it's done a lot. This culture has moved forward. There's a lot of goofy shit that happens, and a lot of it, the socks and
That's always, man. That's
but
always.
exactly.
Humans do goofy shit. That's
Yeah.
what we do.
And so, for the most part, if you weigh all the things and bad things, it's trying to do a lot of good things. Maybe the guy at the top's nice guy, maybe not nice guy. Doesn't matter. The movement is in generally
Positive.
pretty positive.
Yeah.
And that's the only way I can respond. And a lot of people seem to enjoy it. They're liking it. How can you say what people like that's not harmful to others?
Soccer moms are snatching barbells.
Yeah, and the
Christ's
thing
sakes.
that we have to
Very libertarian view of you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
careful, we're in California. You have to understand that, and I use your guys' gym on ESPN as the exact example, that every gym is run independently. So if you went to CrossFit South Bay, which I don't, is that one maybe?
Probably. You know,
I don't know,
piss them
maybe I
off.
should say
Don't-
that, yeah.
Just say
CrossFit,
X.
Fit Strong, Prepared, Faction, Mike BLEDSOE. I don't know.
There you
CrossFit
go.
Jangle Scrubs.
And you had a
That's
really
what
bad
it's all about.
experience, and maybe they were really underqualified people. That I totally believe it. That could absolutely happen. Go to the one 4 miles down the street, and it might be the best gym in the world.
Yeah.
And that might be also terrible. Go to the next one. Go to the next one. And if you don't like it, don't do it.
Yeah.
But you can't tell this company that.
You could say that about any personal training
Yeah.
studio. It could be really shitty,
Oh,
and then a
man.
block away, really good. Just
Well, my
there you
exact
go.
example was, are there some really... Have you ever been to 24-hour... Well, I won't say it. Any other normal gym?
Just keep naming names.
There are some really, really unqualified people. Trust me, they're my students. that I'm like,
I'm trying my best.
So
Yeah.
unqualified.
yeah.
I do a great time. It's the best. It's the best. It's the
Yeah.
best school in the world for exercise science. My students are highly underqualified.
And then I've also
Well, they are
met
when they show up.
some really,
Yeah.
really fantastic personal trainers. Some really tremendous ones. So why would we think that the CrossFit ones are any better or worse? But I get asked that
There's
'cause
good and bad. Like, there's people getting hurt in yoga studios 'cause
Yeah.
doing stupid shit. No
We
one's
host-
like, fucking
There's
get
good
rid
and
of
bad.
yoga.
There's
We
good and bad
host-
doctors, good and bad chiropractors.
Welcome
good
to
and bad
humanity.
Yeah.
dentists.
So when,
whatever.
When I hear horror stories about CrossFit did this, I'm like, oh, I believe it. I believe it entirely.
yeah.
And then when I hear tremendous stories about how many of your guys' people that are in there, whoever non-athletes will say, and they've had tremendous success. They've been there since day one or early
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
And then I don't. I'm like, yeah, that probably happened too.
Yeah.
It's just like any other. You go to one auto shop, it's terrible. You go to the next one, it's fantastic. 4 more, terrible. What? It's how you cannot think through that. I don't know.
True dat, homie. True dat.
Science.
All right.
Man.
Make sure you go to barbellshrugged.com, sign up for the newsletter, check out the shop.
Everybody's got a bonus 35 minutes, by the way. After you said, oh, we're wrapping it up, and no one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really going to shut this down because we got to go to the beach. The girls are waiting, and they're going to be
Oh, yeah.
pissed because they can't look at us. All right.
Yes.
Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, thanks, dude. And
Yeah.
ending with some passion. I like it.
Yeah.
To learn more about how you can support the show, go to barbellshrugged.com and sign up for the newsletter.